The city of Oloranoba had its fair share of rich men, but none of them came close to Akinwale Johnson. At just 32, he was already a billionaire, the youngest to ever rise to such status in the entire region. His name alone commanded respect, his businesses thrived, and every young woman dreamed of being his wife. He was tall, impeccably dressed, and possessed a rare charm that made women weak in the knees. From politicians' daughters to beauty queens, corporate executives to social media influencers, they all threw themselves at him, each hoping to capture his heart. Yet, despite his wealth, success, and influence, Akinwale remained single. Many speculated about his reasons, some believed he was secretly married, others assumed he had no interest in women. A few even whispered that perhaps he was cursed. What no one knew was that Akinwale was looking for something very specific in a woman. And, to everyone's shock, the woman who finally captured his heart was the most unexpected choice, Rhoda, the laziest woman anyone had ever known. Rhoda was, without a doubt, a legendary case of laziness. Unlike other young women who chased degrees, careers, or business ventures, Rhoda chased only one thing: comfort. She was the kind of person who would rather watch the ceiling than lift a finger. House chores? Forget it. Cooking? Only if hunger became unbearable. Hard work? Not in her dictionary. She lived with her widowed mother, who had grown tired of complaining. Rhoda, won't you at least help me clean the house? Rhoda, can't you even go and learn a skill? Rhoda, do you plan to sleep your way through life? To every question, Rhoda had the same response: an exhausted sigh, followed by, I will do it later. But later never came. Her friends mocked her, her neighbors pitied her mother, and her aunties shook their heads in disappointment. This girl will never amount to anything, they would say. So when the news broke that Akinwale Johnson, the billionaire every woman was dying to marry, had chosen Rhoda, the whole city erupted in disbelief. It all started at a high-profile charity gala. Akinwale had hosted the event, and as expected, the place was filled with Lagos' finest beautiful women in glittering dresses, rich men in expensive suits, and socialites eager to be noticed. But while the entire hall buzzed with energy, Rhoda was curled up in a corner, barely interested. She had been forced to attend by her childhood friend, Fadik, who was determined to expose her to better opportunities. You never know who you might meet, Fadik had insisted, dragging her along. Rhoda, however, had other plans. She found a quiet spot, ordered a plate of small chops, and made herself comfortable. The moment she started eating, she was at peace, completely unconcerned with the glamorous people around her. Akinwale had been observing from afar. Unlike the other women who fluttered around him like butterflies, desperately seeking his attention, Rhoda was the only one who didn't seem to care. And that was precisely what caught his interest. Intrigued, he walked up to her table. You seem very comfortable. Rhoda, mid-chew, glanced up lazily. Yes, I am. These small chops are fantastic. That was the first time a woman had spoken to him without the usual forced charm or desperation. Instead of impressing him, she was simply herself. For the first time in years, Akinwale laughed, genuinely. He pulled out a chair, sat down, and joined her. That night, while other women performed their best acts to get his attention, Rhoda did nothing, yet she won him over effortlessly. A week later, the billionaire announced his engagement to her. And the world went mad. Social media exploded. How can the richest young man in Nigeria choose a lazy woman? She must have used jazz. There's no way. Does she even have a job? What does she do? The hate poured in like rain, but Akinwale didn't care. He was in love. The question on everyone's lips was, why her? Even Rhoda herself was confused. Akinwale, why me? She asked one evening, lying on his couch while he watched her in amusement. His answer was simple. Because you have what I need. And what was that? Peace. For years, Akinwale had been surrounded by pressure, by people who wanted to impress him, to use him, to gain from him. He had met women who were smart, ambitious, and hardworking. But none of them gave him what Rhoda did. She didn't stress him. She didn't try too hard. She didn't pretend. When he was with her, he could be himself. He could relax. He could breathe. She was his peace in a world of chaos. But love was not enough for the world. Akinwale's mother was furious. "Son, you can't marry her. She will ruin your legacy." His business associates warned him. "A lazy woman will destroy everything you've built." Even Rhoda's own friends shook their heads. "You don't deserve this blessing. Do you even know how to take care of a man like Akinwale?" The whole world seemed determined to break them apart. But Rhoda, in her usual way, remained unbothered. "If he wants to marry me, let him marry me. If he changes his mind, I will just go back home and continue sleeping." And that was exactly why she kept winning. But the battle had only just begun. Not everyone was willing to accept her so easily. Some of Akinwale's admirers were willing to do anything, to take her place. And little did Rhoda know that a storm was already brewing. The announcement of Akinwale and Rhoda's engagement sent ripples of shock and outrage through the elite circles of Olorunoba. But while the city gossiped and social media boiled with speculation, one woman sat in silence, watching it all unfold with an eerie calmness. Her name was Moro. To the world, she was the epitome of class and ambition, a brilliant lawyer, a power broker, and the woman everyone had assumed would become Mrs. Akinwale Johnson. For 5 years, Moro had been by Akinwale's side. Though they had never officially dated, they had an unspoken understanding. She was the woman who matched his intelligence, his drive, and his status. Everyone believed it was only a matter of time before he proposed. But now, all of that had been shattered by a lazy, good-for-nothing woman who had done nothing to deserve him. Moro didn't rant. She didn't cry. She didn't throw a fit. Instead, she simply whispered, "This is not over." A week after the engagement announcement, Akinwale's mother, Chief Mrs. Dupe Johnson, invited Rhoda for an official family dinner at their estate, a tradition for all women who entered the Johnson family. Rhoda, as usual, was unbothered. She barely even wanted to go, but Akinwale convinced her. "Just come, love. I'll be there with you." What Rhoda didn't know was that this wasn't an ordinary dinner. It was a test. And Moro was going to be there. The night of the dinner, Rhoda walked into the Johnson estate in a simple yet elegant dress, chosen by Fadik, of course, because Rhoda couldn't be bothered. She didn't walk with the calculated poise of a high-class woman, she didn't flutter her lashes or force a fake accent like some of Akinwale's past suitors. She simply existed, like she always did. And the room hated her for it. The dining table was long, filled with sophisticated guests, Akinwale's family, top business associates, and of course, Moro, who sat like a queen at the far end of the table, a knowing smirk playing on her lips. Rhoda didn't notice the tension in the room. She just focused on the food. "Please subscribe." And that was her first mistake. The first attack came subtly. "So, Rhoda," Moro said with a warm smile that didn't reach her eyes, "tell us, what do you do for a living?" A deadly silence followed. Everyone was waiting, expecting her to fumble, to embarrass herself. Rhoda, stuffing a piece of grilled chicken into her mouth, blinked lazily. "I rest." The entire room froze. Akinwale coughed into his glass to suppress a laugh, while his mother's face turned to stone. Moro, still smiling, tilted her head. "Oh, you rest. How lovely. But surely, you must have a passion. A dream." Rhoda shrugged. "I dream of marrying rich, and that's happening now, so I guess I'm living my dream." The boldness. The audacity. Even Akinwale's father, a man who barely spoke at family gatherings, let out a quiet chuckle. Moro's smile twitched. But she wasn't done yet. After dinner, Moro made her move. She found Rhoda alone in the garden, sipping a glass of juice and staring at the night sky, completely unaware of the war she was about to face. "You're not what I expected," Moro said smoothly, stepping beside her. Rhoda yawned. "People say that a lot." Moro's eyes darkened. "I'll get straight to the point. You don't belong here." Rhoda turned to her, finally paying attention. "Oh, Akinwale deserves a woman who can match his success, his intelligence, his vision. Not someone like you." Rhoda smirked. "And who exactly is someone like me?" Moro stepped closer, lowering her voice. "A joke. A placeholder. A mistake that will soon be corrected." For the first time, something flickered in Rhoda's eyes. A slow, almost amused kind of realization. You're in love with him. Moreo's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Rhoda chuckled. Oh, I see now. You've been waiting for him all these years, and now you think I'm taking what's yours. Moreo's lips curled. You're not taking anything, Rhoda. Because this little fairy tale of yours, it won't last. I will personally make sure of that. Rhoda took another sip of her juice and let out a contented sigh. Okay. Moreo blinked. What? I said okay, Rhoda repeated. You can try. I'll be here, resting, while you waste your energy fighting for a man who already chose me. And with that, she strolled back inside, leaving Moreo standing there, fists clenched, heart burning with silent rage. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Moreo had always been a strategist. She didn't rush into battles blindly, she observed, calculated, and struck when the moment was right. Turning Akinwale's family against Rhoda wouldn't be difficult. They already disliked her. All Moreo needed to do was fan the flames. Her first target. Chief Mrs. Dupe Johnson. 2 days after the dinner, Moreo visited Akinwale's mother, carrying an expensive box of imported fabrics. She knew how to play the role of the perfect daughter-in-law. Auntie am I, she said sweetly, hugging the older woman. My dear Moreo, Chief Dupe sighed, waving her into the living room. I don't even know what to say anymore. You've seen the embarrassment my son has brought upon us. Moreo sighed, feigning sympathy. I understand, Ma. Akinwale has always been independent, but this is shocking. Chief Dupe shook her head. I raised him better than this. How can he choose that lazy girl over you? Moreo leaned closer. Auntie, that's why I'm here. I know you love Akinwale. You want the best for him. And I want to help. The older woman's eyes narrowed. How? Moreo smiled. We make him see the truth, before it's too late. The next morning, Chief Dupe invited Rhoda over for tea. Rhoda, who preferred sleeping over social visits, groaned when Akinwale told her. Do I have to go? Yes, love, he chuckled. Just be yourself. She'll come around. Rhoda smirked. Being myself is exactly what she doesn't like. Akinwale kissed her forehead. Then be your best self. That afternoon, Rhoda arrived at the Johnson mansion, wearing a simple boo-boo and slippers. No forced elegance, no pretense. Chief Dupe, however, was prepared. They sat in the grand parlor, and after a few pleasantries, the older woman went straight to the point. My dear, she said, sipping her tea, do you truly believe you are the best woman for my son? Rhoda blinked. Of course. Why else would he choose me? Chief Dupe's lips tightened. Love is one thing, but marriage is different. Do you even understand the responsibility of being a billionaire's wife? Rhoda yawned. I don't stress about things I haven't faced yet. When the time comes, I'll handle it. That was not the answer Chief Dupe wanted. Please subscribe. She set down her cup, eyes sharp. Listen, Rhoda. My son is carrying an empire on his shoulders. He needs a woman who will support him, not a liability. Rhoda smiled lazily. I am his piece. That's enough. Chief Dupe's nails dug into her lap. And what about his reputation? His future children? Do you think your laziness won't affect them? Rhoda shrugged. If Akinwale has a problem with me, he'll say so himself. But he hasn't, so I don't see the issue. Chief Dupe's patience snapped. You will ruin him, Rhoda. Rhoda finished her tea, stood up, and stretched. Auntie, I'm not here to fight. If Akinwale changes his mind, I'll go back home and keep sleeping. But if he still wants me, then that's it. Then she left. No arguments. No begging. Just Rhoda being Rhoda. Chief Dupe was left fuming. And Moreo, watching from the shadows, smiled. The seed of mistrust had been planted. Now, it was time to water it. Moreo knew that direct confrontation wouldn't work. Akinwale was too stubborn. If she told him outright that Rhoda was wrong for him, he would dig in his heels just to prove her wrong. So instead, she chose a different approach. She would make him doubt Rhoda himself. It started subtly. At a high-profile charity event, Moro sat beside Akinwale at the VIP table. Rhoda was supposed to be there too, but she had chosen to stay home because, in her words, crowds drain my energy. Moro, dressed in an elegant emerald gown, leaned in with a warm smile. Akin, she said smoothly, I envy Rhoda sometimes. Akinwale raised a brow. Really? Yes, she sighed. I mean, it must be nice to not have to worry about business meetings, networking, or even attending events like this. Just living a simple, stress-free life while you handle everything. Akinwale chuckled. That's why I love her. She doesn't pretend to be something she's not. Moro nodded thoughtfully. Of course. But doesn't it get exhausting? Akinwale frowned. What do you mean? Moro swirled her wine glass. I just wonder. Do you ever feel like you're in this alone? That maybe, just maybe, you're doing all the heavy lifting in this relationship. Akinwale's smile faltered just slightly. And Moro knew she had planted the first seed. A week later, Moro struck again. Akinwale had been working late, preparing for the launch of his latest luxury real estate project. He came home, tired but excited, eager to share his progress with Rhoda. He found her on the couch, watching a drama series and eating suya. Hey, love, he said, dropping his laptop bag. Rhoda glanced at him. Hey. He waited for her to ask about his day. She didn't. Instead, she casually bit into her meat and went back to watching TV. Akinwale hesitated. Babe, I had a big meeting today. Rhoda hummed. Hope it went well. It did. We finalized the deal. Rhoda smiled lazily. Nice. I knew you'd do it. And that was it. No further questions. No excitement. No deep conversation. For the first time, Akinwale felt a flicker of something, uneasy. Was this what Moro meant? Was he really carrying everything alone? Moro's final move was the most dangerous. She invited Akinwale for coffee, just a friendly chat, nothing suspicious. As they talked, she suddenly sighed. Akin, can I be honest? Akinwale, already lost in thought, nodded. I worry about you, she said softly. You're an empire builder, a man of vision. And yet, I see you settling. Akinwale stiffened. Settling? Moro leaned in. Rhoda is wonderful in her own way, but do you think she's really fit for the life you're building? While you're working day and night, she's sleeping in. While you're making billion-dollar decisions, she's watching TV. You deserve a partner, Akin. Not just a passenger. Akinwale said nothing. But his grip on his coffee cup tightened. Moro had done it. The doubt was no longer just a whisper. It was a storm. Akinwale wasn't a man who made rash decisions. He believed in evidence, solid proof before drawing conclusions. Moro's words had unsettled him, but he wasn't going to act on them blindly. Instead, he would test Rhoda. Not with questions. Not with accusations. But with situations. If she truly wasn't meant for his world, it would reveal itself soon enough. The first test came unexpectedly. Akinwale's younger cousin, Rotimi, called in a panic. His new business had just collapsed under debt, and he needed urgent financial support. Akin, please, Rotimi begged. If I don't get help, I'll lose everything. Normally, Akinwale would handle it himself, but this time, he didn't. Instead, that night, while Rhoda was lounging on their bed, scrolling through her phone, he sighed dramatically. Babe, I don't know what to do about Rotimi. Rhoda glanced up lazily. What happened? He's in a financial crisis. I was thinking of bailing him out. Rhoda yawned. How much are we talking about? 50 million naira. Her eyes widened slightly. And you're not sure if you should help. I just wonder if I'm spoiling him. Maybe he should struggle a little. Rhoda stretched, then sat up. Well, is he responsible? Not really, Akinwale admitted. Rhoda shrugged. Then don't give him a dime. Akinwale blinked. Just like that. She rolled her eyes. Akin, if he's reckless, your money won't save him. It'll only postpone his next mistake. Let him suffer this one so he learns. Akinwale studied her. For a woman who didn't care about business, she had just given him the exact advice he needed. The second test wasn't planned. It found them. A business deal Akinwale had been working on for months suddenly turned into a scandal. A competitor had spread false rumors, accusing Akinwale of bribery and corruption. The media was all over it. His reputation was at stake. That evening, when he came home, he expected questions. Instead, he found Rhoda sitting cross-legged on the couch, eating puff-puff. "Babe," he sighed, exhausted. "Have you seen the news?" She nodded. "Yeah." Akinwale sat beside her. "And?" Rhoda popped another puff-puff into her mouth. "And what?" "I'm being dragged everywhere. They're saying I bribed my way into that deal." Rhoda turned to face him fully. "Okay. So did you?" Akinwale frowned. "Of course not." She shrugged. "Then why are you worried?" Akinwale blinked. "Because it's everywhere." Rhoda wiped her hands and leaned closer. "Akinwale, when you first told me you were a billionaire, did I faint?" "No." "When you introduced me to your crazy family, did I run?" "No." "So why do you think I'll panic because some random jobless people are saying nonsense?" Akinwale just stared at her. Then, he laughed. Because for the first time that day, he saw the truth. Rhoda wasn't blind to his struggles. She just wasn't controlled by them. Where everyone else panicked, she stayed still. Later that night, Akinwale lay awake, watching Rhoda as she slept. For weeks, he had been searching for proof that she didn't belong in his world. Instead, he had found the opposite. Rhoda wasn't lazy. She was unbothered. And in his chaotic world, filled with pressure, betrayal, and expectations, she was the only person who didn't demand anything from him. She was his balance. His peace. His perfect match. And nobody else had to understand it. Because he did. Moro thought she was winning. She had planted the seeds of doubt, and she believed they were growing inside Akinwale's mind. But what she didn't realize was that Akinwale had already made up his mind. Now, he was just waiting to see how far she would go. One evening, Moro invited Akinwale to dinner. He suspected something, but he went anyway. He wanted to see her next move. Over wine and candlelight, Moro leaned in, her voice soft and persuasive. "Akin, I know this is none of my business, but I just can't keep quiet." Akinwale sipped his drink, pretending to be curious. "About what?" She sighed dramatically. "Rhoda." Akinwale raised a brow. "What about her?" Moro bit her lip. I heard some things. Things I think you should know. Please subscribe." Akinwale leaned back, watching her carefully. "Go on." Moro hesitated, as if debating whether to speak. But she had already come too far. "I heard that Rhoda, well, she's not as loyal as you think." Akinwale's expression didn't change. "Really?" Moro nodded solemnly. "Yes. People have seen her, with another man." Akinwale let the silence stretch. Then he asked, "Who are these people?" Moro hesitated. "Just some trusted sources." Akinwale smirked. "And this man she's been seen with, do you have proof?" Moro's confidence wavered. I can get proof." Akinwale set down his glass. "Moro." She swallowed. "Yes." He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "Let me tell you something about Rhoda." Moro waited, nervous. "She's not perfect," he said slowly. "She doesn't cook every meal, she doesn't wake up at dawn to chase money, and she doesn't force herself into circles that don't interest her." Moro exhaled, thinking he was finally realizing the truth. But then he smiled. "And yet, she's the only person in my life who doesn't pretend. Who doesn't play games. Who doesn't manipulate." Moro's face froze. Akinwale continued. "You think I don't see what you're doing? You tried to turn me against her. You whispered lies, hoping I'd believe them." Moro's heart pounded. "Akinwale, I was only trying to." "To what?" he interrupted. "Protect me. Or get rid of her so you can have me." Moro gasped. "I would never." Akinwale stood up. "Save your breath, Moro. You sabotaged yourself. And now, you get to watch me walk away." News spread quickly. Moro had been caught lying about Rhoda. People started questioning her integrity, and soon, her own business connections began distancing themselves. Rhoda, as always, remained unbothered. One evening, she found Akinwale watching her with a smirk. "What?" she asked. He chuckled. "You never even lifted a finger, and Moro destroyed herself." Rhoda yawned. "That's the problem with people who dig traps. They always forget to watch their own step." Akinwale laughed. Because she was right. And she always had been. Rhoda had never known a love that didn't come with conditions. Every man she had ever met, whether rich or poor, had seen her as something to possess. The wealthy ones saw her as a trophy, a woman whose power could expand their empire. The poor ones worshipped her for her status, hoping to rise through her name. Even those who whispered about love eventually showed their true intentions. Not one of them had ever loved her for nothing. And so, she made a decision. She stripped herself of everything. Her luxury. Her influence. Her empire. She walked away from the power that defined her and became ordinary. Then, she met Akinwale. Akinwale was different. He never asked about her past. He never questioned why she didn't seem ambitious or driven like the women who chased after him. He never tried to change her. And, most importantly, he never once asked for her money. He fell in love with her laziness, her carefree nature, her unwillingness to impress. For the first time in her life, Rhoda felt safe. She believed she had finally found what she was looking for. Until one day, Akinwale began asking questions. It started as curiosity. At first, he was amused by her lack of ambition. Then, he became intrigued. Then, suspicious. One evening, he sat across from her and said, "Rhoda, who are you really?" She laughed lightly. "Your fiancé." He shook his head. "No. That's not what I mean. I've met women who struggle to be noticed, women who chase wealth, power, and success. But you don't chase anything. And yet, something tells me you're not ordinary." Rhoda felt a chill. She had worked so hard to become invisible. Had he finally seen through her? Akinwale leaned forward. "What are you hiding?" Akinwale couldn't shake the feeling that Rhoda was hiding something. But every time he questioned her, she smiled lazily, stretched, and brushed it off like a joke. So, he decided to dig. He called David. "I need you to look into Rhoda's past," he said. "Find out everything you can." David hesitated. "Sir, are you sure? She seems harmless." "That's exactly why I want to know more," Akinwale said firmly. "No one is this content with nothing. Please subscribe." David worked fast. But after days of digging, he returned with an empty file. "There's nothing, sir," David said, looking puzzled. "She has no financial records of significance, no business history, no major assets. It's like she's been invisible." Akinwale frowned. "That's impossible. Her background is normal." "Too normal," David continued. "No secret bank accounts, no hidden properties, no past investments. If she was ever wealthy, she completely erased it." Akinwale's fingers tapped against his desk. How could someone so effortless, so unconcerned with wealth, not even have a past? What was she running from? And more importantly, why had she chosen him? Akinwale leaned back in his chair, staring at the empty report. 4 days, he had been restless. Digging. Searching. Now, he had his answer. There was nothing. Rhoda was just Rhoda. No hidden empires. No secret bank accounts. No tangled past waiting to explode. Just a woman who moved through life like a soft breeze, unbothered, unshaken, and uninterested in proving anything. And strangely, that made him love her even more. From that moment on, Akinwale stopped searching. He stopped questioning. He let himself enjoy the peace she brought him, the way her carefree nature balanced out the weight of his responsibilities. She didn't push him to be greater. She didn't challenge him to build more. She just was. And in her laziness, he found something rare. Rest. His friends still didn't understand. How can you, the most powerful young billionaire, choose a woman who does nothing? Akinwale only smiled. They would never understand. Rhoda was his peace. Her laziness, Her simplicity, it was the very reason he adored her. She didn't chase after him, didn't demand to be impressed, didn't make him feel like a trophy to be won. She was just Rhoda. And that was enough. Akinwale knew this day would come. The day his family would summon him and demand his final decision on a wife. He also knew exactly how they would react when they saw Rhoda. But he didn't care. The Johnson family estate was a massive structure built on old money and prestige. It was the kind of place where great decisions were made, political alliances, business mergers, and, of course, the selection of a suitable wife for the heir of the empire. Akinwale walked into the grand sitting room, hand in hand with Rhoda. His parents, uncles, aunts, and a few elders were already seated. The moment they saw her, the tension in the room thickened like a storm cloud. His mother, Lady Dupe, let out an exhausted sigh. His father, Chief Johnson, frowned deeply. His elder uncle, Barbacunal, cleared his throat and said, "Akinwale, this is a serious matter. Where is the wife you have chosen?" Akinwale squeezed Rhoda's hand gently. "She's right here." The room exploded. Again, his mother shouted, "You brought this girl here again?" His father's voice boomed. "Akinwale, what is this nonsense? We asked you to bring a worthy woman, and you came back with this." He waved his hand dismissively at Rhoda. Barbacunal scoffed. "The same lazy girl? The same girl who does nothing?" Rhoda, unaffected by the uproar, yawned lazily and stretched. I didn't know this meeting would take so long. I should have brought my pillow." His mother gasped. "You see, this girl is impossible. Just look at her. She doesn't even pretend to be serious." Lady Dupe turned to Akinwale. "How can you, a billionaire, choose a woman who doesn't even try to be useful? What has she achieved in life?" Akinwale smiled. "She has achieved my peace." His father's voice turned cold. "Akinwale, you are the pride of this family. You carry the name of this dynasty. We cannot allow you to destroy it." His mother nodded fiercely. "And that is why we have made the decision for you." The door opened, and a woman walked in. Moro. Tall, graceful, and dressed in a stunning gold outfit, she radiated power and ambition. Everything about her screamed perfection. She was exactly what the family wanted. She walked straight to Akinwale and smiled sweetly. "Akin, darling. I've missed you." His mother turned to him with finality. "Moro is our unanimous choice. This is the woman you will marry." Rhoda, who had been reclining lazily on the couch, looked up at Moro and smirked. "Wow. So this is my competition?" She sighed. "I thought she would at least bring me food." Lady Dupe clutched her chest dramatically. "Akinwale, look at her. She is a disgrace. She's not even ashamed." Rhoda yawned again. This meeting is stressing me. Do you people always talk this much?" Moro turned to Akinwale with a confident smile. "You deserve better, my love." Barbacunal nodded. "She's right. You will marry Moro, and that is final." The room fell silent as everyone waited for Akinwale's response. Would he choose his family's perfect woman, Moro? Or would he stand by the lazy, carefree, impossible Rhoda? Please subscribe. Akinwale exhaled slowly. The entire room was waiting for his response. His father's eyes burned with authority. His mother's expression was full of disappointment. His uncles and aunts sat in stiff silence, all nodding in agreement with the verdict. Moro stood tall beside him, confident, elegant, and sure of her place in his life. And then there was Rhoda, lazily slouched on the couch, unbothered, yawning like the matter didn't concern her. He smiled. Akinwale stepped forward, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I understand why you're all upset," he began. "I understand why you don't approve of Rhoda. She doesn't fit into your expectations, and she certainly doesn't fit into your perfect world." He paused, looking at each of them. "But have you ever stopped to ask why I love her? Why I keep choosing her despite everything?" Nobody answered. "Because she is exactly what I have been looking for my whole life." He turned to Moro, his voice unwavering. "Moro, you are everything a man could ever want. Strong, powerful, ambitious, intelligent, beautiful. And if I were looking for a business partner, a competitor, someone to match my every move, you would be my first choice. Moro smiled proudly. But I'm not looking for a competitor. I don't need a running mate. The smile on Moro's face vanished. Akinwale faced his family again. I have spent my entire life chasing success, fighting for dominance, pushing myself to win at all costs. Do you know how exhausting that is? How lonely it feels? He glanced at Rhoda, who was now rubbing her eyes sleepily. I don't want to come home to another competitor. I don't need someone who will challenge me in business, someone who will push me to work harder. I already push myself hard enough. His voice softened. I need balance. He took a deep breath. Rhoda may be lazy, but she is my peace. She may not care about business, but she cares about me. She may not be ambitious, but she is content. And do you know how rare it is to find a woman who is simply content? His mother opened her mouth to speak, but he raised his hand. Mom, I know you wanted a different kind of wife for me. Dad, I know you wanted someone with power and influence. But the truth is. He turned to Moro, his voice turning final. You are not my wife, Moro. Rhoda is. And I need you to leave me alone because I have found the love of my life. Silence. Thick, suffocating silence. His mother folded her arms, shaking her head in disbelief. His father sighed heavily and rubbed his forehead. Moro, for the first time in her life, had no words. Barber Cunnell finally cleared his throat. Well, I suppose that settles it, then. His mother huffed but said nothing. His father stood up and walked away. The meeting was over. The next morning, before the sun had fully stretched across the city, Rhoda did something nobody expected. She dressed up. Not lazily. Not in her usual oversized, flowy gowns or simple slippers. She dressed like royalty. A deep blue lace gown that shimmered like the ocean. A matching jewel, perfectly tied. Subtle makeup that enhanced her natural beauty without making her look forced. A pair of elegant, gold-heeled shoes that clicked against the marble floors as she stepped out of her car. And she wasn't alone. She came with Akinwale. She had never walked with such purpose. Never held her head this high. Never looked this commanding. Akinwale's parents, his uncles, and his aunts were still gathered in the family house, reeling from last night's meeting, whispering about their son's ridiculous choice. But when they saw Rhoda standing before them, something in the room shifted. The lazy girl they had mocked now looked like a queen. She cleared her throat. I believe I owe you all an explanation. She walked to the center of the room and turned to face them. I know what you all think of me. That I'm lazy. That I'm not ambitious. That I have no plans for my life. That I'm not good enough for Akinwale. Her voice was calm but carried the weight of 1,000 untold truths. But today, I want to tell you my story. She took a deep breath and began. I was born into wealth. Not the kind you see on TV, not the kind people struggle for. I was born into dynasty-level wealth. My father is Chief Aditakunbo Olonrawaju, the only son of the Olonrawaju lineage, one of the richest families in the southwest. Everyone gasped. Akinwale's father sat up straight, his expression unreadable. His mother's lips parted slightly, shocked. Rhoda continued. My mother, unlike many women in such powerful families, was his only wife. I was their only child, their princess. From the moment I was born, I never lacked anything. Not once. Her voice trembled slightly. I never had to struggle for a thing. My clothes. Imported. My meals. Prepared by world-class chefs. My school. The best private institutions money could afford. When I turned 16, my father bought me a private jet for my birthday because he said commercial flights were beneath me. The room was completely silent now. She smiled bitterly. I have never worked for money. Never had to. I have been surrounded by butlers, chauffeurs, maids, and attendants my entire life. Everything I wanted was brought to me. My only job was to exist, to look beautiful, and to carry on the Olonrawaju legacy with grace. A tear slipped down her cheek, but she quickly wiped it away. She turned to Akinwale's mother. You call me lazy, but tell me, How does one work when there is no work to do? The older woman flinched slightly, but Rhoda continued. I never had to wake up early to hustle because hustling is for people who need something. I needed nothing. Everything was at my feet before I even asked for it. My father made sure I never lifted a finger. She turned to Akinwale's father. Please subscribe. You say I lack ambition, but what ambition do you expect from someone whose future was already written before she was born? My father didn't need me to work. My mother didn't want me to work. My entire life was already laid out for me to marry a billionaire's son, to continue the cycle of wealth. To exist in comfort. She let out a deep, shaky breath. But do you know the problem with that kind of life? Everyone was still too shocked to answer. She pressed her lips together, blinking rapidly. You never know who truly loves you. You never know who would have chosen you if you had nothing. A pin could have dropped, and it would have been heard. I have been adored all my life. By my parents. By friends. By men who swore they loved me. She laughed softly, but it was filled with pain. But do you know what they all had in common? They loved me for my money. My father's power. My luxurious life. No man ever saw me for who I was. They saw the empire behind me. They saw the golden opportunities. They saw a life free of struggle. She swallowed hard. So I did the only thing I could. She spread her arms slightly. I stripped myself of it all. Gasps erupted in the room. I walked away. I left everything behind and decided to start over. I wanted to know what it felt like to be ordinary, to be loved for just being me. Her voice softened. And that is when I met Akinwale. She turned to face him. He didn't know who I was. He didn't care about my background. He wasn't trying to use me, or impress me, or get anything from me. She sniffed, looking back at his family. He just loved me. For me. Not for my wealth. Not for my status. Not for what I could give him. She inhaled deeply and turned back to his parents. You all wanted me to explain myself. Now I have. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. I may not be ambitious by your standards, but I know the value of true wealth. It is not in businesses, or assets, or power. She placed a hand on her heart. It is in peace. In love. In certainty. Her voice was barely above a whisper now. And for the first time in my life, I have all three. No one spoke. Akinwale's mother wiped her eyes discreetly. His father's fingers tapped restlessly against his knee, his expression unreadable. Even Moro, who had been sitting with her arms folded the entire time, was stunned. The lazy girl, the ambitionless girl, the undeserving girl was actually a woman who had chosen a different kind of life. A woman who had everything yet gave it all up. A woman who had never known true love until now. Rhoda straightened her shoulders, her voice firm. All I ask is that you see me for who I am. Not for what you assume I should be. She turned to Akinwale. And if they can't, that's fine. Her smile was soft, but her next words shook the room. Because I was born into one empire, but I am fully capable of building another. Please subscribe. The weight of Arike's words still hung thick in the air, pressing down on everyone in the room like a heavy fog. Some of the elders shifted in their seats, dabbing at their eyes. Akinwale's mother stole a glance at her husband, who was staring at Arike with an unreadable expression. Even Akinwale himself had a new light in his eyes, a mixture of admiration and something deeper. But just as it seemed the storm had passed, Moro, who had been silent for too long, suddenly sat forward. Her jaw was clenched, her nails digging into her palms, and her voice, though slightly shaken, was laced with bitterness. So what now? She asked, her tone sharp with defiance. How do you explain Rhoda? All thought was your mother. The atmosphere tensed again. Arike's lazy gaze shifted toward her, half-lidded, as though the question barely held her interest. Moro smirked. Ah, I see. So she's not your mother, then? All this time, you've been stage managing everyone? Deceiving people left and right, including Akinwale? She scoffed, crossing her arms. So that's your game? Tricking my man into falling for your trap? Akinwale inhaled sharply and made to respond, but before he could get a word out, Arike slowly lifted a finger. Shish. The sound was barely above a whisper, but it commanded silence. Akinwale blinked. Arike turned her head lazily and gave him a soft, dismissive smile. I wasn't talking to you. The statement landed like a slap. Moreo's mouth twitched in irritation, but Arike simply tilted her head in that slow, deliberate way of hers, her eyes locking onto Moreo's. You asked me a question, she murmured, stretching her fingers before folding them neatly in her lap. So let me answer it. The air seemed to grow colder. You're right. Rhoda. Mama Rhoda. A gasp rippled through the room. But you are wrong about one thing, she continued, her voice steady, her expression calm. This was never about deception. Moreo narrowed her eyes. Then what was it about? Arike sighed deeply, stretching as though she had just woken up from a nap, before fixing Moreo with a stare so measured, so completely unbothered, that it made the other woman shift slightly in her seat. The woman you call Memar Arike is on a multi-million naira contract. Silence. Even Akinwale's father frowned slightly. Contract. Arike nodded. I hired her. Another gasp. Someone muttered a prayer under their breath. Moreo's face twisted. You what? Arike's eyes gleamed with quiet amusement. I hired her, she repeated, her tone silky and unhurried. To play the role of my mother until I find a true lover. Shock rolled through the room like an incoming tide. Moreo opened her mouth, but for once, no words came out. Rhoda. Easily before crossing them again. Any more questions? Please subscribe.